David, I'll let you take it away and tell us about who we've got coming up here. Although the good general
Yeah,
already
he
has
did a
kind of
great
given us
intro.
a
That's fantastic. And so, yes, his colleagues and friends are joining us. Major General Kim Crider, who was the Chief Technology Officer of Space Force most recently, is now with Deloitte, is a very deep expert in AI, especially with regard to national security, et cetera. So she's actually perfect for this, and she's going to be participating in a lot of these discussions. And we're really honored that she's going to have a conversation with our great and good friend and our hero, General Keith Alexander, a past recipient of the Radegui Award himself, and he'll be presenting that to Kevin and Mandy in a little bit. So can't
great.
thank the two of you enough for being here. We're gonna, with that said, we're gonna turn it over to you, Major General, and we look forward to your conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. It really is an absolute pleasure to be here this morning with General Keith Alexander. Sir, you have just been such a legendary figure in our history of our U.S. military, and have contributed so much to the cybersecurity of our nation in the important roles that you have played as the NSA director and the first commander of U.S. Cyber Command. Thank you, sir, for being here with us today. I'm going to just do a real brief introduction for you, General Alexander, and then we're going to roll into a really exciting conversation about artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, which is critical to each of the domains that we are featuring in this Cyber, Land, Air, Sea, and Space Summit. So, General Alexander, currently today you are the founder, chairman, and CEO of IronNet Inc. And in that role, you provide strategic vision to corporate leaders on cybersecurity issues through the development of cutting-edge technology, consulting, education, and training. General Alexander is reinventing how industries mitigate cybersecurity threats with Iron Defense, a patented solution designed to detect and alert on anomalous enterprise network behaviors through fine-tuned analytics, with a goal to bring communication systems between private and government sectors to create the next level of intelligence sharing and protect the nation against cyber threats on a global stage. As I mentioned earlier, General Alexander, the four-star general with a 40-year military career culminating in the role of director of the National Security Agency and chief of the Central Security Service from 2005 to 2014, and also holds the distinction of serving in this role longer than any other director. While serving as the NSA director, he was appointed by Congress to be the first commander to lead the U.S. Cyber Command. He led this role from 2010 to 2014, establishing and defining how our nation is protected against cyber threats. John Alexander, thank you again for being here with us today.
Well, thank you, Kim.
So we're going to talk for a little bit here about the intersection of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. And I can think of no one better to help us walk through this conversation. Artificial intelligence is certainly a critical technology area that our government has determined the need to continue to invest in. We see our adversaries actively investing in artificial intelligence, and the threat is certainly a pacing threat that we've got to stay out ahead of. So much so that our Congress commissioned the National Security Commission for AI that delivered a report last year that emphasized the need to continue to invest in the infrastructure and the skill sets and the capabilities to be able to apply artificial intelligence to our nation's most critical challenges, not the least of which is securing our nation against cybersecurity threats. So with that, sir, you've spoken extensively about the global cybersecurity threat landscape. What do you see as the current threats in cyber? Let's start with that, the current threats in cyber that we see out there today. And then we'll get into how we might see AI helping to address those.
Yeah, well, so thanks, Kim. I think, General Dave Petraeus set us up well for both you and I. I think he talked about the real-time regional gateway, which was a system that we put into Iraq to detect bad guys. Instead of taking 16 hours, how do we get it to real time? We got it down to 1 minute. Dave was the commander in Iraq at the time and took the risk of saying, yep, I trust that you guys can do this, go for it. And we did, and it worked. And it changed the battle space and provided he and his subordinate commanders the intel they need. Now your question on, so where do we go in cybersecurity? I see very much the same issue that we have in cybersecurity that we had there in Iraq, 17 years ago. And that is our time to get information to the people who needs it and who can action it is way too long. And you've hit on the key reason. It's a combination of detecting the right types of events, running it through some kind of machine learning AI system, and you need kind of a transition between an expert system to machine learning to artificial intelligence, and we can go through that here in a second. But it seems to me that as you do that, what we're doing is we're taking something that, here's how we always used to do it, which was we'd look at a rule-based system, and a rule-based system stops what you know. It detects what you know. And if we could just do what we know, then we would have no problem in cyberspace. And therein lies the big problem that we face today. It's what we don't know. It's the unknowns. And so how do you detect unknowns? And that becomes something that you do with behavioral analytics. I want to detect what's going on in my network, like you would for cancer research. I want to detect the things that are going on in my network that I can see with what I know, and then pull all that data, which arguably is too much for humans to handle. A lot of false positives. And there's where the machine learning, expert system, AI all come in. If we can take that together and we can do it for one company, anonymize that data, run it through all these algorithms, and then share it with other companies in an anonymized form, we build a radar picture for cyber that our nation needs in the future. And it's only possible if you do all those steps. You got to find a way of detecting it. You got to have some kind of expert system machine learning to handle the volume. You got to have a correlation engine that allows you to correlate it and anonymize it. And finally, the key point, you got to share that with the government, those who can shoot back. You see, today, our system is not designed to help the government shoot back. That was the problem that I saw when I ran Cyber Command. If you can't shoot back, they get to shoot at us all they want. And the consequence is they can shoot at us, and we've got more glass houses than they do. We lose. So I think that was a long-winded answer, Kim, but it's really the heart of the problem that we have. And I think with your background in all of this and what you've done, you can see that we need to change the way we think about cyber in a very productive way. And that is keep doing all that we do on the knowns, find the unknowns, share them, and give it to the forces that can fire back. We shouldn't give the adversary multiple shots back. It's interesting, there was a BBC article out about the National Mission Force of US Cyber Command shooting back and taking on the bad guys, blocking them in Latvia and in Ukraine and other areas, going into the war in Ukraine. I think that's really telling of why we didn't see a lot in Ukraine. Now, if you step back and say, okay, so what does that mean to us? From my perspective, it means we're stopping what we know and what we can. What they can't see is what's hitting our country. There's the big gap. And so we've got to build that radar picture for cyber, much like the Air Force was. With your background, you say, okay, I got the Air Force, the picture, I can do this. And if we build that picture, it would change fundamentally the way we think about cyber.
Right, absolutely. Some really interesting points there, sir, that you've raised. Focusing on the unknown, really getting a sense of, as you said, continue to do the things that we do, but now being able to bring more insight, more intelligence about the things that we aren't doing or the things that we don't know. Because in fact, we've seen so much of the attack vectors are coming at us from areas that are unseen, are unknown. And if we have that intelligence to help us, really build that threat picture, to really build that threat intelligence picture, and to better understand the entire landscape, I think we're going to be in a much better place. You mentioned Ukraine a little bit, and so let's key in on that in what we're seeing. That's coming out of the Russian-Ukraine conflict. We certainly have seen cyber security threats occur. We've seen cyber attacks. This whole idea of really trying to get a sense of the threat volume that's out there. Let's talk a little bit more about how AI and machine learning in the current context can really help us think through and be better aware, more aware, have that increased situation awareness on the threat environment, to have a better sense of how to address these advanced persistent threats, and maybe some of the capabilities that you're really driving forward to get a sense of where those threats are coming from, to have better command and control of the cyber environment.
Yeah, so I think first, if we step back and look at what's going on in Ukraine, Putin has painted himself into a corner. You remember, he started in February. He had this big vision that Ukraine would collapse, and he'd just roll in. He didn't have a plan that went beyond a peacekeeping force. He didn't have the resources. He didn't have the trained troops. And as a consequence, it failed miserably. And so he shifted to Eastern Ukraine. Let's take over the four regions, those four regions of Ukraine, the Donetsk, Luhansk, et cetera. And he's even failing in that. And the people back home are starting to take notice. At the same time, Prigozhin, who runs the Wagner group, you see the head of the Chechen group, you see bloggers in Russia starting to push back on Putin, saying, this is a big problem. He has two options in my book. One is a more intense attack on Ukraine, potentially with a dirty bomb, which has been talked about last week, and or a nuclear weapon following that dirty bomb, and cyber. And in cyber, the attack is not necessarily on Ukraine, because he's been hitting Ukraine for the past several months, since February. It's, how do I break up the coalition? How do I break up the European desire to support Ukraine and the US desire? Couple that with our current political environment, and you can see he sees a wedge where some that say, hey, should we provide Ukraine the support they need? I think, as we sit back as people who served in the military, we're a guiding light for democracy. And when a fledgling democracy like Ukraine is getting beat up by an autocracy just because they want the land, somebody has to stand up. I think it's right that we do that and that we support them. And so this is going to be the challenge that our nation faces. And in that, those attacks that come against us, it comes back to, so how are we going to see them in time to stop them? In the past, our approach has been like it was with solar winds. We see the attack, we see all the bad things happen, then we respond. That's like in missile technology. A missile hits Boulder, Colorado, and everybody goes, wow, why didn't Boulder do something? Send them a note. You send a note to the mayor of Boulder. You should have told us you got 72 hours to report a missile attack. And we do have that. We tell them we want 72 hours for you to report a cyber attack. Think about that. That's after the damage has been done. So what we're really getting to is, so that's stupid. If we did that in the physical domain, everybody'd say you're crazy. Why do we do it in the cyber domain? And the answer is because we don't understand it enough to say, how do we pick up the information that we have and create that real-time picture? And it goes right back to the heart of what you started out with, artificial intelligence. You're going to have behavioral analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence to handle that picture and develop it and share it. And oh, by the way, if we share it, we can share it with our allies. It gets into your question on command and control. The second part of that is, how do you get into their command and control? And the answer is, you got to get out in front of it. You got to detect it before they use it. If you wait till they're using it, it's like, I know where there's a missile battery, but I'm going to let them shoot first, and then we'll figure out what to do. We wouldn't do that, but we do it in cyber. So we have to take this more offensive approach and look at how we go after these command and control things like Cobalt Strike and others that are used by adversaries to actually attack us. So I think as you look at this, Kim, I think we have to be proactive in going after the threats, and we have to work together. And that's where our country needs to step back and say, it's okay to share anonymized cyber threat information. And perhaps Congress could come in and say, and we'll provide you liability protection if you share it. So we as a nation, we need to take some drastic steps. And, and I think, as Dave brought out, we took drastic steps in Iraq when we were taking casualties. We're taking casualties today in cyber. We need to take those steps.
Very, very well put, sir. Thank you so much. And yeah, so this idea of sharing, right? Let's dive in here a little bit more, because it sure is important, right? And I think we can all agree how valuable it is to share the information, to share the intelligence about the threats, to be able to get out in front of it, as you say, and to be able to do that analytics and share the analytics, the behavior analytics on those threats, what we're seeing, how we're seeing those threats evolve, the pattern of life before it becomes a problem. We can actually, take some responsive action. You've talked about this notion of sharing, first and foremost, in the context of collective defense, and applying the concept of collective defense to the cybersecurity threats that we see. Let's unpack this a little bit for our audience. What is collective defense for cyber?
So today, if you think of the way we defend, and you look at every company out there, that company is focused on what's hitting their network. They don't have the insight of what's hitting the company down the road that's in their same sector. They can't see what's hitting them, and they can't see what's hitting another company and another company in the government. All they see is what's hitting them. They find out what's hitting someone else after someone else has been hit. They go through their legal channels and they decide they can share it. That's sharing today. The consequence is that's of no value. So when we look at that, think, so why do we do it that way? And the answer is because we focus on the knowns and we're surprised by the unknowns. And if we don't change that, we're going to be continuously surprised to our detriment in a very significant way. So that means you have to go to behavioral analytics, which are very noisy. There's a lot of data. But imagine now if you could take all that data and you just put it up here in the cloud. We'll just put it right here. And then company B anonymizes their data and they put it up in the cloud. And company C, all the companies put it up there. And we can automatically correlate those events. Wouldn't it be nice to see 18,000 companies are also being hit by solar winds? Wouldn't that be an easy thing to describe and say, whoa, 18,000, something's going on. Why is that? And we would have seen that in June. Right? So that's part of it. And it's anonymized. So the government just needs to know, hey, something bad's going on. We need to take action. And the companies that are being hit can see, wow, so what is it? And they say, well, it's a command and control server for domain name servers, probably Cobalt Strike. You should look at this. You should look at this. And here's what we're doing to defend, block this, do this. Our defense is better. Our knowledge sharing is better. And our government is able to take action. Here's the problem. It's like going to the way we used to do the Air Force before you had radars. There wasn't an automated sharing. It was easy. You'd say, you fly out on this, and you come back on this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Don't run into each other. It's bad. Bad things happen. And then we got radars and we started to come up. Now, radar was a new technology. And we had to train people from going from one type of radar to another and get them to use together. And then we saw how we could use different types of radars, and we built an air picture. We need to build a cyber picture to help people understand what's going on that can be shared between the commercial sector and the public sector that can defend our country. And the only way to do that is with behavioral analytics.
Right. And the heart of behavioral analytics certainly is that artificial intelligence and machine learning capability. And as you pointed out, the ability to leverage those analytics and share those across the private sector, or across all of the companies that are providing that critical infrastructure that's supporting our nation, or supporting really key components of the integrated network environment that we all rely upon, not just here on the ground terrestrially, right, but also in the air, right? You mentioned the air picture, the importance of radar, and it's sort of shifting that to the importance of getting that cyber view of the environment, the network environment, the cyber terrain. Well, we know that cyber terrain is not just on the ground, it's in the air, and now it's in space. And we've got space systems that are also exchanging information and passing information between themselves and between space, air, and the ground. And they're all riding on the cyber domain to do so. So the ability to share information and to share that behavior analytics to get a real understanding of the threats in the environment, to be able to coordinate what those threats are, so that the appropriate actions can be taken, is certainly affecting us in all domains. Do you want to speak at all to the emergence of space and where this idea of collective defense and the application of behavioral analytics to really provide that understanding of threats in that domain is becoming more and more prevalent?
Absolutely, because when you think about space and you think about the satellites that are above us, think of that as an extension of cyber. Because all our communications, you have all these satellites, and they're growing with what everybody's putting out there. There's going to be a more dense population of communications in space. And importantly, what we get to is the following. And we saw this in the aircraft carrier, and we saw this in the airplane. They start out as a recon capability, and over here emerge into an exceptional warfighting platform. That's what we see going to happen with cyber, and space is going to be a part of it. And I believe we're going to see people contesting us in space, not just our communication satellites, but our space operations, as those who want to have the credentials to say they were first to do something, they're going to impact our ability to operate in space. So we're going to see this go on in both space and on the surface here. So the issue really comes down to, if we're going to war in this area, and China has said specifically that in their next war against a technologically superior country, they will use cyber first to attack that country to thwart their technological edge. That's us. That's what they're going to do. They've said it. We know it, but we haven't taken the steps to do what you just said. So how do we take that whole surface, take the surface communications, put on top of it our space communications? You have space operations, you have air operations, you have sea operations, you have ground operations. Look at all the operations that we have going on. All of those connect in communications and compute, and all of those are subject to disruption by cyber means. And so you take that holistic view, and what we step back with and say, we've really got to train. So one of the things I think you and I found of greatest importance within the military is training to failure. You would do that at your Nellis. You'd take your pilots and train them to failure in dogfights and all that. We take the ground to NTC, the National Training Center. And we now need to take cyber with both the commercial and the public sector working together and train them, because in this space, they are actually involved. They're committed. In the air, the land, the sea, they're being protected. They don't have a fight in that. But in cyber, they're the target. They have to tell us when they're being hit. They've got to be involved, and we've got to work it, whether that's a manned mission to Mars or a group operating in the Pacific. It's the operations of the future, and we really got to get ahead in this area.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, one last question here, sir. This has really been an exciting conversation, and we've hit on so many important topics here as it relates to the intersection of AI and cyber. and the importance of sharing that threat information and the outcomes of that behavior analytics to raise everybody's awareness and everybody's capabilities to defend their assets. But when we talk about threat information, it often raises some concerns for many about protecting data privacy and security. What are your thoughts there, and what are some ways in which we can ensure the ability to share this information? You mentioned anonymizing the active attack networks and ensuring that that information is anonymized. Can you speak to that just a little bit more to help allay some of how can we help allay some of these concerns relative to privacy?
Well, I think the first part of allaying everybody's concerns is let's be really specific on what we're going to share. And first and foremost, we want to share threat-related information that's going on. We want to anonymize who's being attacked. And if it's in the content of communications, remove the content. So you protect the company that's involved. Nobody knows who the company is. They may know it's the finance sector, energy sector, the defense sector, but they don't know who. And they don't know the content of the communications. They just know that I'm seeing a Cobalt Strike attack on this company through a DNS command and control capability. And here's what we're seeing in that. We share that with others. So you take what we'll call metadata that everyone has agreed can be shared. And that's what we share in the cloud. If the company itself needs to look at the content of communications, then the security ops center that supports that company can take that action, and only they can take that action. On the defense side, what you want to do is give the offense the knowledge about who it is. And from that perspective, there should be no protection that I'm being attacked by a server coming from Russia and it's ... That's all shared anonymously in the cloud. You can see who it is, what it is, and how that's operating. So I think the issue that we face, unfortunately, is our politicians are so polarized about many of these topics that they speak without knowledge. And they say they're listening to our phone calls or reading our emails. And, you know, I told some of the members of Congress, when you call me, I don't listen to you. What makes you think we're listening to you now? And the second part would be perhaps more without being so flippant. The reality is we're doing stuff that's done and comports with all the legal things that we'd say, whether it's the courts, the administration, or Congress. And I think people need to step up with that, because this will be a critical fight that we have. We have to share threat information. I would take it one step further. We should encourage companies to share and provide them liability protection if they share, such that that leads to the comprehensive defense of our country. That's where I think we need to go. Reward them for sharing, help them take that step, and show that by sharing, we're actually going to be better defended, and they will get knowledge from others who are sharing, saying they can put into that thing, I believe this is this type of attack, I'm blocking it using this. And somebody who's new to it say, well, I'm not familiar with domain generation algorithm. What's that mean? And somebody who is can write that in and help them know what DGA or DNS and all these different types of cyber, it can help uplift the junior people to become really knowledgeable. We're better off sharing.
Well, that really is a wonderful way to wrap this up and put a fine point on that critical statement. We are better off sharing. We must share. We have to share this insight and information. We've got to share the threat intelligence. The threat is real, as we've talked about here. It extends across every single domain and certainly up into space. We all depend on space, and we're connected to space, to our capabilities in space through the cyber domain. And we've got to be able to share all of our communications through all of those domains. We have to do it collectively. We have to do it with behavioral analytics so that we can know not just the knowns, but the unknowns, where those threats may be coming at us from. So AI and ML help us do that with behavioral analytics. We've got commercial companies that are coming together and providing that collective defense through the sharing capabilities that we talked about here. And the important point that you just made is that not only must we do it, but we can do it. We have methods to do this in a reasonable, reliable, legal way of protecting data privacy and anonymizing that information so that it can be effectively shared and used for the defense of those assets. So I cannot thank you enough for being a part of this conversation today and highlighting how important AI is to cybersecurity and part of the overall focus on ensuring that our country can stay ahead of the threat and continue to make those critical investments in artificial intelligence to protect our critical assets in the cybersecurity and the cyber domain. With that, sir, we're going to now turn to, I think, an award presentation that we're going to be a part of here.